Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
Find my way.
The sound of Barbara's laughter floated up the stairs, sharp and sudden, cutting through the quiet hum of the late evening. It was a Thursday, and I was buried under a pile of reports, my eyes bleary from hours of staring at spreadsheets and market analyses. The laugh, usually a bright spot in my day, felt different this time, forced, even hollow. It wasn't the carefree sound I was used to hearing when Barbara was truly happy. I paused, my pen hovering above the paper, and listened more intently. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of voices, Barbara's, and then another, deeper voice, unmistakably belonging to Rudolph. He had become a fixture in our home over the past few months, his visits becoming more frequent and lingering longer each time. It didn't bother me at first. Rudolph was my best friend, after all, but lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I shook my head, trying to dispel the unease creeping into my thoughts. "You're overthinking it," I muttered to myself, forcing my attention back to the reports. But the numbers blurred before my eyes, my mind unable to focus. I found myself straining to hear the conversation downstairs, catching bits and pieces, laughter, a low murmur, then silence. I tried to push the doubts away, but they clung to me, heavy and insistent. I had noticed the way Barbara's demeanor had changed recently, subtle shifts that only someone who knew her well would pick up on. She had become more distant, her smiles not reaching her eyes, her touches fleeting and absent-minded. And Rudolph, who once seemed like a brother to me, had begun showing up more often, always at convenient times when I was occupied or away. The familiar clink of glassware reached my ears, followed by Rudolph's voice, closer now, as if they were in the kitchen. "You really outdid yourself with dinner tonight, Barbara," he said, his tone warm. "Thank you, Rudy," she replied softly, using the nickname that only close friends called him by. There was a pause, and I imagined them standing close to each other, exchanging a look that I wasn't privy to. "It's nice to have someone appreciate my cooking." "I always appreciate you," Rudolph responded, his voice barely above a whisper. That did it. I put down my pen and closed the laptop, the work forgotten. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. What was I hearing? Was I imagining things? I made my way down the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the bottom, I hesitated for a moment, the quiet of the house pressing in on me. I could see the soft glow of the kitchen light spilling into the hallway, the faint clatter of dishes signaling that they were still in there. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward the kitchen, forcing a casual smile onto my face. As I entered, Barbara looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Henry, you're finished early," she said, her voice a little too bright, a little too quick. "Yeah, decided to take a break," I replied, trying to keep my tone light as I leaned against the doorframe, my gaze flicking between her and Rudolph. He was standing by the counter, his hand wrapped around a wine glass, the remnants of a meal scattered across the table. "How's the work going?" Rudolph asked, his tone as friendly as ever, but there was a tension in the room that hadn't been there before, or had it always been there, and I was just now noticing. "Busy," I said, shrugging, "but you know how it is." Barbara busied herself with clearing the table, her movements stiff, her smile strained. "Rudy stopped by with some fresh produce from the market," she explained, her back to me. "I thought I'd whip up something quick." "How thoughtful," I replied, watching them both carefully, searching for any signs that would confirm the growing suspicion gnawing at my gut. Rudolph took a sip of his wine, nodding. "Thought I'd check in on you too. Make sure you're not working too hard, Henry." "I appreciate that," I said, my voice steady, though inside I was anything but. The three of us stood there in an uncomfortable silence, the air thick with unspoken words. After what felt like an eternity, Rudolph finally set his glass down and cleared his throat. "Well, I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow," he said, glancing at Barbara before turning to me. "Take care, Henry. We'll catch up soon." "Sure," I said, nodding as he made his way toward the door. I watched him leave, my mind racing the questions I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I turned to Barbara. She was still at the sink, her back to me, her shoulders tense. "Barbara, I said quietly, stepping closer. Is everything all right? She paused, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer, that she would keep her back to me like she had been doing for weeks now. But then she sighed, turning around slowly. Of course, Henry, she said, her voice too calm, too measured. Why wouldn't it be? I searched her eyes, trying to find some sign of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had shared my life for the past 10 years. But all I saw was a reflection of my own uncertainty. Just wanted to make sure, I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She returned the smile, but it was as hollow as mine. You worry too much, she whispered, stepping forward to place a gentle kiss on my cheek. I'm fine, we're fine. But as she turned away, the weight of her words lingered in the air between us, heavy and insubstantial, like the cracks in a mirror that had yet to shatter. The unease stayed with me long after Rudolph left that night. I told myself it was just my imagination, too many late hours, too much stress from work. But deep down, I knew better. There was something between Barbara and Rudolph, something they thought they were hiding well. It gnawed at me, making it impossible to concentrate on anything else. I needed answers. The next morning, I woke up with a plan forming in the back of my mind. As Barbara kissed me goodbye before heading to her yoga class, I caught a whiff of her perfume, different from the one she used to wear. I tried to smile, but it felt forced, brittle. I'll see you later, she said, her voice smooth and casual, as if everything were normal. Yeah, I muttered, watching her leave. Once the door clicked shut behind her, I sprang into action. I had always been tech-savvy, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. In the closet upstairs, tucked away under some old boxes, I found the small surveillance cameras I had purchased months ago for our security system. Installing them in the house had been a project I never got around to, but now they had a different purpose. I moved quickly, feeling a strange sense of urgency. My hands trembled as I placed the tiny cameras in the living room, kitchen, and bedroom, hiding them carefully behind picture frames and air vents. I didn't want to do this. I hated the idea of spying on Barbara. But what choice did I have? The doubt had taken root, and it wouldn't let go until I knew the truth. Once the cameras were set, I downloaded the app on my phone that would allow me to monitor the footage in real time. The interface was easy to navigate, and within minutes, I had live access to every corner of our home. I stared at the screen, feeling both excited and sick to my stomach. I told myself I wouldn't check it obsessively, that I was only gathering evidence. But as soon as I sat back down at my desk to work, the app pinged, a motion alert from the living room. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively reached for my phone, swiping the screen to see what had triggered the notification. There was Barbara, sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand. I watched as she tapped out a message, her face unusually still. I couldn't make out what she was typing, but my gut told me it wasn't work-related. I zoomed in, leaning forward, eyes glued to the screen. A few minutes passed before another motion alert appeared, this time from the front door camera. My pulse quickened. It was Rudolph. He stepped inside, wiping his shoes on the mat and calling out in a tone far too casual for my liking. Hey, Barb. Got your message. Everything all right? I swallowed hard, waiting for her response. Barbara stood up from the couch, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Yeah, Rudy, I just needed to talk. About what? There was a pause, and then she walked toward him, her body language more relaxed, more intimate than it had been with me in weeks. About us, she said softly. I felt my stomach twist into knots as I watched them sit together, their conversation low and intimate, their hands brushing as if by accident. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't just in my head. Something was happening, right under my nose. And now I had the proof. The hardest part was realizing that it wasn't some random fling. It was deeper than that. There were feelings involved, and that's what hurt the most. I had seen enough. My hands shook as I shut the app, my mind racing with thoughts I wasn't ready to face. Betrayal. Lies. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to calm down. It wasn't time to confront them. Not yet. I needed a plan, a way to deal with this without losing control. The shadows they thought they were hiding in had betrayed them. Now it was my turn to watch, to wait, and when the time was right, I would act. I spent the next few days in a fog of disbelief, still haunted by what I had seen. My hands trembled each time I replayed the footage of Barbara with Rudolph, the laughter, the looks, intimate in ways that should only exist between a husband and wife. But there was something else gnawing in me, something deeper, as if the betrayal went beyond just Rudolph. And I couldn't shake the suspicion that Barry, the other friend I had trusted implicitly, was involved too. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I came home later than usual. My heart sank when I noticed Barry's car parked a few houses down. This time, I didn't hesitate. My hands clenched into fists as I rushed inside, heading straight to the bedroom where I had hidden the small surveillance screen linked to the cameras. The monitor flickered to life, and there they were, Barbara and Barry, sitting on the couch, too close for comfort. At first, their conversation seemed casual, but it was the way they looked at each other, the way Barry's hand lightly touched her arm, that told me otherwise. I watched, barely breathing, as Barry moved closer, his voice too low to hear, but the intent was clear. Barbara didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, allowing him to kiss her. The kiss deepened, growing more intense, and before I knew it, Barry's hands were all over her. "How long have we been having an affair?" Barry whispered against her neck, his voice suddenly audible. "A little over a month," Barbara murmured, eyes half closed. "Rudolph doesn't know. At least, I don't think he does." My stomach churned. The betrayal was deeper than I imagined. Not only was she having an affair with one of my best friends, but she was also deceiving the other. They had all played me for a fool, and I had been blind to it. Barry kissed her again, his hands wandering, and the sight of it made my blood run cold. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I switched off the monitor, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of their deception felt like it would crush me. I had lost control of my life. Barbara's affair with Rudolph had been painful enough, but now Barry too. It was as if everything I knew, everything I had trusted, had crumbled around me. It wasn't just one betrayal. It was a web of deceit, spun right under my nose. I sank into a chair, numb from the realization. This was no longer about Barbara's infidelity. This was a conspiracy between the people I had allowed closest to me. They had both crossed lines, and for what? For the thrill? For a few moments of stolen pleasure. The rage that bubbled inside me was like nothing I had ever felt before. There was no coming back from this, no mending the broken pieces of our marriage. Barbara had chosen her path, one of deception and betrayal. And now, with Barry and Rudolph both tangled in this mess, I knew I had to act. The next step was clear. I had to put an end to this charade, no matter what it took. Days passed, but the weight of the betrayal only grew heavier on my chest. The more I watched, the more I realized how carefully Barbara and Rudolph had crafted their secret world. They thought they were so clever, hiding their meetings, using coded language, but the cameras never lied. The longer I observed, the more something cold and calculating stirred within me. I could feel the fury simmering just beneath the surface. I wanted justice, but I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. Late one night, after another torturous day of pretending everything was normal, I found myself scouring the internet for solutions. Discreet revenge services. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I stumbled upon a site. It had no flashy ads, no real branding, just a single black screen with a simple message. "We clean up life's messes." It felt wrong, but I was too far gone. I needed to fix this, to take control. I clicked through the website until I reached a form, asking for basic details. It felt clinical, distant, as if I were simply filling out a work request. Name. Problem description. Desired outcome. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. The guilt of what I was about to do almost overwhelmed me, but then I thought of Barbara's smile as she whispered to Rudolph when she thought I wasn't looking. I clenched my jaw and started typing. Henry Simon. Problem. Infidelity involving my wife and two close friends. Desired outcome. End it permanently. I hit send, feeling the weight of my actions settle deep in my stomach. Moments later, a response appeared. "We will be in touch. Be ready." I sat back, staring at the screen in the dim light of my study. It was too late to turn back now. 2 days later, I received a call. The voice on the other end was low and emotionless, like gravel. "Mr. Simon." "Yes," I said, my voice a bit shaky. "You contacted us regarding a delicate matter. Is that correct?" I swallowed hard, steadying my breathing. "Yes. We've reviewed your case. We'll handle it, but we need more specifics." "What do you mean by handle it?" I asked, my throat suddenly dry. The voice on the other end let out a quiet chuckle. "We removed the problem. How far are you willing to go?" I hesitated, feeling the weight of those words. Remove the problem. It was no longer just an idea. This was real. There was no turning back. I want them out of my life. For good. "Understood," the voice replied. "We'll make arrangements. You'll be contacted when it's done. Be patient." Before I could respond, the line went dead, leaving me with a gnawing sense of finality. I stared at my phone, still gripped in my hand. What had I just set in motion? I spent the next few days in a state of restless anxiety, waiting for a sign, any sign, that the service had begun its work. Every message, every phone call, made my heart pound in my chest, but no word came. I went through the motions of my life, attending meetings, managing projects, but all the while, my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't focus. I became a spectator in my own life, watching from the sidelines as things unraveled. Then, one evening, something changed. I returned home from work later than usual, finding the house eerily quiet. Barbara hadn't called or texted all day, something that used to be common before. But now it felt like a warning. I stood in the entryway, listening for any signs of life. Nothing. I crept upstairs, my steps deliberately slow, not wanting to alert her to my presence just yet. As I reached our bedroom, I paused outside the door, hearing faint voices. Barbara's voice, soft and almost pleading, filtered through the door. She wasn't alone. "Rudolph, we can't keep doing this," she whispered. "Henry's not stupid." "I told you," came Rudolph's deep voice. "I've got it under control. He won't find out." I pressed my back against the wall, my fists clenched. How wrong they were. I already knew everything, and soon so would they. I moved downstairs, making my way to the living room where I could keep an eye on the stairs, watching them from the sidelines of my own home. I felt like a ghost, unseen, unheard, but very much present. The minutes stretched into an hour, each second in agony, but then the front door opened quietly, and a man dressed in black stepped inside. My heart skipped a beat. It was the service. The cleanup had begun. The man scanned the room briefly, his movements calculated before he spotted me lurking in the shadows. Without a word, he nodded, a subtle signal that things were progressing. Then he moved upstairs, barely making a sound, vanishing into the same hallway I had just left. I stood there, gripping the arm of the couch so hard my knuckles turned white. I could hear murmurs from the upstairs hallway, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The plan was in motion, and there was no stopping it now. A few minutes later, the man reappeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly. I felt a sudden rush of dread. This was it. "It's done," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. His expression was unreadable, cold. I swallowed, my throat dry. What happens now?" "They'll realize soon enough," he replied, not giving any details, and without waiting for my response, he slipped out the door and disappeared into the night, leaving me alone with the weight of what I had set in motion. The day had come. I sat at the dining table, my fingers tapping rhythmically on the polished wood as I stared at the front door waiting. The room felt colder, heavier, as if the weight of my impending confrontation had sucked the warmth from the air. Barbara had been avoiding me since the night Rudolph and Barry had been removed from the equation. There was no more hiding for her. I heard her heels clicking against the floor before she stepped into the room. She paused at the doorway, her eyes flickering with uncertainty, probably sensing the shift in me. "Henry, you're home early," she said, forcing a smile, though it barely hid the nervous tremor in her voice. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I motioned for her to sit across from me. She hesitated for a moment before pulling out the chair, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the seat. "Barbara," I began, my voice low, calm, but carrying a weight it hadn't before. "I think it's time we had a conversation about the truth." Her face paled. I could see her mind racing, grasping for a way out of the web of lies she had spun. Truth. She laughed lightly, though the sound was hollow. What are you talking about, Henry? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her, not giving her the space to wriggle away this time. I know everything, Barbara. The visits, the lies. Rudolph. Barry. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face, but I pressed on. I've known for weeks. You thought you were clever, but you were careless. She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand, silencing her. You let them into our home, I continued, the bitterness spilling into my words. You betrayed me, Barbara. You destroyed what we built together. Her lips trembled, tears welling in her eyes. Henry, I never meant for it to happen like this. It was a mistake. A mistake? I spat the words, anger rising in my chest. A mistake is forgetting to pick up groceries, not having an affair with my best friends. You betrayed me, Barbara. You shattered everything. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands, but I didn't move. My heart had hardened. There was no room for sympathy now. The time for that had long passed. Where are they? She whispered through her tears, her voice barely audible. They're gone, I said, my tone cold, out of our lives for good. Barbara looked up at me, her tear-streaked face a mask of fear. What? What do you mean? I leaned back, my eyes never leaving hers. Don't worry, they're fine, but won't be back. The implication hung heavy in the air, and she knew exactly what I meant. For a moment, the room was silent, except for her shallow breaths. Then she pushed back her chair and stood up, unsteady on her feet. Henry, please, we can fix this. I can fix this. I shook my head slowly, rising to meet her gaze. No, Barbara, it's too late. You broke us beyond repair. The confrontation was over, but the scars it left would last forever. In the aftermath of that confrontation, Rudolph and Barry disappeared from my life. It wasn't a gradual fading away. It was swift, like a door slamming shut. They knew they could never come back from what they had done, and in their own way, they accepted that. Rudolph moved to another city, taking his guilt and shame with him. He left without so much as a goodbye. Rumor had it he couldn't keep his business afloat after the scandal spread among our mutual acquaintances. His once thriving life crumbled, just like the trust he had shattered. As for Barry, he vanished almost overnight. He cut all ties, changing his number and leaving the company he worked for. No one heard from him again. Some said he went abroad, starting fresh where no one knew his name or the weight of his betrayal. I didn't care where they went. I was just relieved to have them out of my life, their absence a necessary void where once there had been friendship. I divorced Barbara and soon met a decent girl whom I married and have been living happily with her for several years.
Find my way.
The doctor's office was colder than usual, or maybe it was just me. My fingers fidgeted with the edge of the paper sheet that covered the exam table as I waited for Dr. Reynolds to return. Routine checkup, I had thought. Maybe some advice on cutting down my cholesterol or a suggestion for more exercise. After all, at 41, I was trying to stay on top of my health, but nothing could have prepared me for what Dr. Reynolds would say next. When he finally came back into the room, his face wasn't the usual calm, reassuring mask he wore. Instead, there was something different in his expression. Concern, hesitation, even. Matthew, I've gone over your test results, he began, closing the door behind him and sitting on the stool opposite me. His voice was measured, too measured. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. You tested positive for gonorrhea. I blinked. For a moment, his words didn't register. They just hung in the air between us like a bad joke, waiting for the punchline that never came. What? No, that's not possible, I stammered, my heart pounding in my chest. There has to be a mistake. Dr. Reynolds looked at me with those tired, understanding eyes. I've double-checked the results. I'm sorry, Matthew, but there's no mistake. You've contracted gonorrhea. I recommend starting treatment as soon as possible. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Gonorrhea? How? I had been faithful to Charlene our entire marriage. 17 years of loyalty, through thick and thin, through sleepless nights with the kids and the daily grind. There was no explanation for this. I stared at him, grasping for something, anything that made sense. But I've never cheated. I've never. Charlene and I, there must be some other way, right? Something I'm missing? Dr. Reynolds exhaled softly, glancing at the chart in his hands before meeting my eyes again. It is an infection transmitted from partner to partner, Matthew. Although there are rare cases of exclusion from the rules, they're exceedingly uncommon. The most likely explanation is intimate contact between a man and a woman. The world felt like it was tilting sideways. I had come in expecting a quick checkup, maybe some advice about drinking more water. And now I was sitting here being told I had an STI, something that only made sense if someone had broken our marriage vows. And it wasn't me. Does Charlene know? Dr. Reynolds asked, breaking into my spiraling thoughts. No, I said quietly, my voice shaking. I haven't told her, but I guess I need to. He nodded. It's important that she's aware, Matthew, both for her health and, well, for the future of your relationship. I stood up, feeling the weight of the conversation settling into my bones, making me feel older than I had just minutes ago. The room spun slightly as I tried to piece together how this could have happened. Charlene? Could she really have been unfaithful? Thanks, Doc, I murmured, barely able to make eye contact as I left the room. The ride home was a blur. The engine of my car hummed beneath me, but I barely registered it. Images of Charlene flashed through my mind, her laugh, the way she brushed her hair out of her eyes, the years we had shared together. How could this happen? How could she betray me? When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car for a few moments, staring at the house where we had built our life together. Our two sons, Derek and Jason, would be upstairs, probably playing their video games or texting their friends. And inside, Charlene would be getting dinner ready, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. I stepped out of the car, my legs weak, my mind still racing with 100 questions and no answers. The truth, the awful truth, was about to come crashing down on all of us. As I opened the front door, I heard the clinking of dishes in the kitchen. Charlene's voice floated out to me from down the hall. Hey, honey, how was the checkup? I didn't answer at first. I couldn't. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching her like a stranger, unsure of who this woman really was anymore. Matthew. She called again, turning around, a curious smile on her face. That smile, how could she wear it so easily when everything we had built was about to come crumbling down? I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. We need to talk. I stood at the edge of the living room, my feet feeling as though they were rooted to the floor. Charlene's laughter from the kitchen still lingered in the air, sharp and bitter now. The words I had to say were heavy, heavier than anything I'd ever spoken, but they had to be said. Charlene stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyes settling on me. Her smile faded when she saw my face. Matthew, what's going on? You look pale. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How could I start this conversation? How could I tell the woman I'd spent nearly 2 decades with that something was terribly wrong? She stepped closer, concern clouding her eyes. Is everything all right? You're scaring me. I forced myself to breathe. I just came from the doctor, I began, my voice tight. And he told me something that doesn't make sense. Charlene furrowed her brow, setting the towel on the table. What do you mean? What did he say? I felt the words crawl up my throat, bitter and raw. I have gonorrhea, Charlene. Her face froze, eyes wide in shock, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. It was as if time had stopped. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Gonorrhea? She repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Matthew, how? I don't know how, Charlene. I cut her off, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. I haven't been with anyone else. You know that. You know I've been faithful. Her face turned pale, and she took a step back, shaking her head. You're accusing me? You think I've been cheating on you? What else am I supposed to think? I shot back, my fists clenching at my sides. This doesn't just happen, Charlene. The only way? No, I haven't, she started, but her voice wavered. The hesitation in her denial was subtle, but it was there, just enough for me to notice. Something was off, and I could see it in her eyes. I stared at her, my pulse hammering in my ears. Charlene, look me in the eyes and tell me the truth. Have you been with someone else? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her silence said everything I needed to hear. A wave of nausea hit me as the realization sank in, as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. Tears welled up in her eyes. Matthew, I never meant for it to. I turned away, unable to look at her. The woman I had loved for 17 years, the mother of my children, had betrayed me. The room felt suffocating, as though the walls were closing in, pressing the truth harder into me. How long? I asked quietly, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Charlene hesitated again, wiping her eyes. It's not what you think. It wasn't planned. It just happened. How long? I repeated, each word cutting like a knife. She swallowed hard, her voice breaking. 6 months. It's been 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of deceit, all while I thought we were a team, building our life together. I turned back to her, eyes burning with disbelief. 6 months, I echoed, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. I'm so sorry, Matthew, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I shook my head, the weight of her words crashing down on me. You didn't just hurt me, Charlene. You destroyed everything. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unbearable. The life we had built together now seemed like a cruel lie, unraveling in front of us, one painful truth at a time. Sitting across from Audrey Simmons, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. Her office was sleek and professional, the smell of polished wood and fresh paper filling the air. But it did nothing to soothe the storm brewing inside me. Matthew, she began, her voice steady but kind, I'm really sorry you're going through this, but it's important we approach this strategically. Divorce is never easy, especially when there are children involved. I nodded, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. I didn't even see it coming. 17 years, and she just... I trailed off, the disbelief still gnawing at me. Audrey adjusted her glasses and leaned forward, her pen poised to take notes. The fact that she's been unfaithful complicates things, but it can also work in your favor when it comes to the division of assets and custody. Have you had any conversations with her since finding out? I hesitated, then shook my head. We talked, if you can call it that. She admitted to the affair, but we haven't discussed what comes next. I paused, swallowing hard. I want to protect my sons, Audrey. Whatever happens, I can't lose them. She gave me a reassuring look. That's our priority. Custody arrangements can be tough, but if we can prove that she's been unfaithful and show any signs that she might be planning something behind your back, it'll give us leverage. Her words hit me like a punch. What do you mean, planning something? Audrey set down her pen and folded her hands on the desk. Infidelity is often just the tip of the iceberg. It's not uncommon for someone in Charlene's position to start preparing financially, setting up accounts, moving money, anticipating a divorce. I think it would be wise to hire a private investigator. They can look into any financial irregularities or hidden assets. The thought of Charlene not only cheating on me but also preparing to leave, perhaps even taking steps to ensure she walked away with more than her fair share, made my stomach turn. You really think she's capable of that? I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. Audrey met my gaze, her expression serious. In my experience, people can do surprising things when they think their back is against the wall. It's better to be prepared. If we can find anything concrete, hidden accounts, unusual financial moves, it strengthens your case. You deserve to come out of this on fair terms, Matthew. I nodded, trying to wrap my head around the situation. Charlene's betrayal was more than just emotional now. It was financial too. My mind raced as I thought of the possibilities, the potential lies that had built up around me. Audrey stood, signaling the end of our meeting. I'll get in touch with a trusted investigator. In the meantime, gather any financial documents, bank statements, or unusual activity that you've noticed. We'll be thorough. I stood as well, extending my hand to her. Thank you, Audrey. I don't know what I'd do without your guidance. She smiled, giving my hand a firm shake. We'll get through this, Matthew. You're not alone in this fight. As I walked out of her office, the weight of what lay ahead settled heavily on my shoulders. This wasn't just about a failed marriage anymore. This was war. And I had to be ready for whatever Charlene was planning next. The private investigator's report was waiting on my desk when I returned home, a plain envelope that seemed to pulse with the weight of the truth inside. My heart pounded as I sat down and tore it open, my hands trembling. Each page revealed something worse than the last. Transactions I didn't recognize, funds siphoned into an account I had no idea existed, all tied back to Charlene. She'd been preparing for this for months, maybe even longer. I ran a hand through my hair, the reality sinking in like lead. Charlene had not only betrayed me emotionally, but had been quietly setting up her escape plan, funneling money into secret accounts. The truth was uglier than I could have imagined. My phone buzzed, interrupting the heavy silence in the room. It was a call from Audrey Simmons. Matthew, I've just received the investigator's findings, she said without preamble. We need to talk. I'm looking at it right now, I said, my voice tight. I can't believe it. She's been moving money into a separate account for over a year. Did she ever plan on telling me, or was she going to run the moment everything was in place? Audrey's voice was calm but firm, the kind of tone that signaled we had to stay focused. This is serious, Matthew. Financial deceit like this is going to work heavily in your favor during the divorce. But you need to act quickly. We'll file for an immediate freeze on her accounts to prevent further withdrawals. But there's more to consider: custody, property, and your son's future. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. What if she tries to take them? What if she thinks this is her way out, to disappear with the boys? Audrey's tone softened. I understand how you feel, but remember, you have the upper hand now. With this information, you can prove she's not acting in good faith. We can request an emergency custody hearing if it comes to that. You're doing the right thing by fighting for your boys, and we'll make sure the court sees that. A knot tightened in my chest. This was all becoming too real, too fast. I trusted her, Audrey. How could she do this to me, to us? There was a brief silence on the other end, then Audrey's voice, steady as always, broke through. People can surprise you, Matthew, sometimes in ways you'd never expect. But now that you know the truth, you have to protect yourself and your family. I took a deep breath, staring at the damning report in front of me. You're right, I'll do whatever it takes. Audrey's voice took on a tone of finality. Good, we start tomorrow. I'll prepare the necessary documents and we'll make sure Charlene doesn't have the chance to pull anything else. Stay strong, Matthew, you've got this. As I hummed up, the weight of the betrayal settled in a little more heavily, but so did my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my sons, their future, and making sure Charlene didn't take more from me than she already had. The morning air felt heavier than usual as I stepped out of my car and approached Audrey Simmons' office. My heart pounded in my chest, a mixture of dread and anticipation. Today, we finalized the strategy. Today, I'd arm myself for the battle ahead. Audrey greeted me with a firm handshake as I entered her office. Matthew, let's get straight to business. I sat down, feeling the weight of everything pressing on my shoulders. I'm ready. What's next? She pulled out a thick folder and opened it in front of me. We've frozen her accounts, so she can't touch any more of the hidden funds. But now comes the hard part. Divorce is a fight, and it's going to get messy. We need to make sure you're prepared for what's coming. Her words hit like cold water. I always thought of divorce as a distant, abstract concept, something that happened to other people. But now it was my reality, and there was no avoiding the ugly truth. Audrey continued, her voice calm but commanding. We'll need evidence to secure custody of your sons. Financial records are on your side, but we'll also need to document any behaviors of Charlene's that showed instability or a lack of responsibility. I frowned, my mind racing. She's always been a good mother to the boys, at least I thought so. But now, with everything I found out, I don't know what's real anymore. Audrey leaned in, her eyes sharp. This is a chess game, Matthew. Right now, you're in a strong position, but she'll fight back. We have to anticipate her moves. She may claim you're too focused on your career or too detached. A chill ran through me. Detached? I've been working to provide for my family. Audrey nodded. I know, but people twist things in court. We need to be one step ahead. Are there any texts, emails, or anything that can prove her neglect of the family or any inconsistencies? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I haven't been keeping track, but I know something's been off for a while. Maybe it's time I dig through our messages. Do that, Audrey said. The more we have, the better. There was a moment of silence as I absorbed everything. This was war, and Charlene wasn't the woman I thought I knew. I looked at Audrey, my resolve hardening. I'll fight for my sons. I won't let her take them from me. Audrey smiled, a glint of approval in her eyes. Good, we're going to make sure she doesn't. With that, the battle lines were drawn. And I knew that whatever came next, I had no choice but to be ready. The courtroom felt like a battlefield. Charlene sat across from me, her expression cold and detached, as if we hadn't spent 17 years building a life together. My lawyer, Audrey, stood with confidence, presenting the mountain of evidence we had gathered, the hidden bank accounts, the financial discrepancies, the lies she had spun behind my back. Charlene's lawyer tried to paint me as an absentee husband, too focused on work to care for my family. But when the private investigator took the stand, revealing the truth of Charlene's affair and her attempts to siphon funds for a new life, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Audrey's final statement was simple yet devastating. This is not just about infidelity. It's about a deliberate betrayal, both personal and financial. Matthew deserves justice, and the children deserve stability. The judge's decision came swiftly. Custody of the boys was awarded to me, and Charlene was ordered to repay the funds she had hidden. Her face fell as the gavel struck. Justice had been served. The war was over, and I had won, not just for myself, but for my sons.
Find my way.
The sky was a pale, cloudless blue that Sunday afternoon, the kind that usually promised tranquility. Nicholas insisted on taking a drive, saying we all needed fresh air after the long week. I agreed, eager to break the routine, though I couldn't ignore the strange distance that had grown between us lately. We hadn't had a real conversation in months. It was all quick kisses on the cheek, rushed mornings, and late nights where he'd slip into bed long after I'd fallen asleep. Betsy, our 4-year-old daughter, was strapped into her car seat behind us, humming a nursery rhyme as her chubby hands clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit. Nicholas was unusually quiet, his eyes fixed on the road, one hand gripping the wheel a bit too tightly. I glanced over at him, trying to decipher his mood. "Everything okay?" I asked, more out of habit than real curiosity. He barely responded to my voice these days. "Yeah," he muttered, not taking his eyes off the road. "Just tired." I nodded, but something about his tone put me on edge. Nicholas used to be full of life, full of charm. The man sitting beside me now felt like a shadow, a stranger. As we drove further into the countryside, passing golden fields and clusters of trees, Betsy's voice suddenly broke through the quiet hum of the car engine. "Mommy, the girl in the trunk wants to come out now." My stomach flipped, and I turned around in my seat to look at her. She was smiling, completely unaware of the bomb she had just dropped. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "The girl," Betsy repeated, her little fingers tapping her rabbit's ears absent-mindedly. "She says she's scared and wants to come out." A cold shiver crawled up my spine, and I shot a glance at Nicholas. His reaction was immediate. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darted to the rearview mirror, flicking between Betsy and the road. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, the muscles in his forearm tensing. "Betsy, that's silly," Nicholas said, his voice strained, almost too casual. "There's no girl in the trunk." "But she said so, Daddy," Betsy insisted, her voice taking on that stubborn, insistent tone that 4-year-olds master so well. "She told me she doesn't want to hide anymore." My heart raced as I watched Nicholas. His face had gone pale, his eyes now fixed firmly on the road ahead. He wasn't just tense, he was afraid. "Betsy, honey," I started, trying to stay calm for her sake. "Are you playing pretend?" She shook her head with a little smile, as if I didn't get the joke. "No, Mommy," she told me in a whisper. Nicholas's knuckles were white against the steering wheel. He cleared his throat, the sound thick with discomfort. "Let's drop this, okay? It's just a game." But it didn't feel like a game. There was something about the way Betsy spoke, so certain, so matter-of-fact, that gnawed at me. I tried to laugh it off, but Nicholas's reaction only deepened my suspicion. Why was he acting so strange? The rest of the drive was suffocatingly silent. Nicholas didn't speak again, his eyes forward, his body rigid. I could feel the tension radiating from him, thick and palpable in the small space of the car. I turned around to Betsy again, watching her swing her legs contentedly, her little lips humming softly. I glanced at the trunk through the rearview mirror, my thoughts swirling. Could it really be possible? Could Betsy have somehow sensed something I had missed? We finally arrived home, and Nicholas practically jumped out of the car before it even came to a stop. He muttered something about needing to make a call and disappeared into the house, leaving me alone with my confusion and a gnawing pit of dread brewing in my stomach. As I unbuckled Betsy from her car seat, her innocent eyes met mine, and she said quietly, "She doesn't like it in the trunk, Mommy. She wants to come out." I tried to smile, tried to play along, but her words echoed in my mind long after we'd walked inside. What girl was she talking about? Was this just a child's imagination, or was there something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface? As I stood in the kitchen, watching Nicholas through the window as he paced the backyard, phone pressed to his ear, I couldn't shake the sense that our lives had just been tipped off balance. Something was wrong, terribly, terribly wrong, and it all started with Betsy's innocent little words. The days after that drive felt like a slow, unraveling thread, pulling at the seams of everything I thought I knew. Nicholas's behavior became more erratic. He stayed late at work, barely speaking to me when he came home, always preoccupied, always distracted. The warmth he once had was gone, replaced by a cold, distant silence that settled between us like a thick fog. And Betsy, with her innocent comments, unknowingly added fuel to the fire. It was a Thursday evening when I decided to confront Nicholas. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The pit in my stomach had grown too heavy to ignore. He had just walked in, his tie loosened, eyes tired but restless. He barely glanced at me before heading straight to the fridge for a beer. "We need to talk, Nicholas." He paused, the bottle halfway to his lips, and shot me a wary glance. "About what?" I swallowed hard, trying to gather my thoughts. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but Betsy's words had haunted me for days now. Her constant talk about the girl in the trunk wouldn't stop, and Nicholas's obvious discomfort every time she mentioned it was too much to overlook. "About Betsy," I started, my voice steady but firm. "She keeps talking about a girl in the trunk, and I need to know why you're so nervous about it." Nicholas's face stiffened, and he set the bottle down with a hard clink. "Gabriella, it's just a kid's imagination. You're reading too much into it." "Am I?" I crossed my arms, stepping closer to him. "Because every time she says it, you look like you've seen a ghost." "What's going on, Nicholas?" His eyes flashed with something, a mix of anger and fear. But he quickly masked it with indifference. "You're being ridiculous. She's 4. Kids make things up." "I know she's 4, I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "But there's something you're not telling me. You've been acting strange for months, and now this." "I'm not doing this," he cut me off, pushing past me toward the living room. "I'm not entertaining this nonsense." I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest. "It's not nonsense if our daughter is seeing something, Nicholas. She's a little girl. She doesn't just come up with this out of nowhere." He spun around to face me, his eyes dark with frustration. "Gabriella, I'm under a lot of stress at work, all right? You're making something out of nothing. Then tell me the truth." I demanded, my voice rising, "because I don't believe you." The silence that followed was thick and heavy, and I could feel the tension vibrating in the air between us. Nicholas stared at me, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. That silence, that refusal to speak, it was all I needed. He was hiding something, and deep down, I already knew what it was. The late nights, the coldness, Betsy's strange comments, it all pointed to one thing. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, my mind racing, my heart sinking with every new thought. The next morning, while Nicholas was in the shower, I decided to check his phone. I had never invaded his privacy like this before, but something in me had snapped. I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't going crazy. His phone was on the nightstand, screen glowing faintly in the early morning light. My hands shook as I swiped through his messages. At first, there was nothing unusual. Work emails, messages from friends, the usual. But then I saw it, a name that made my stomach drop. Peyton. I opened the thread and immediately felt sick. Flirty texts, plans to meet, hints of a relationship that had been going on for months. And worst of all, a message from just 2 days ago, confirming my worst fear. It was risky hiding in the trunk, but at least they didn't see me. "Miss you already." I couldn't breathe. My world felt like it was spinning out of control as I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. Nicholas had been cheating on me, and worse, he had literally been hiding her in the trunk while we drove around with our daughter in the backseat. I barely heard the sound of the water shutting off in the bathroom. I only had seconds before he came out, so I quickly took screenshots of the messages, sending them to my own phone before slipping his back onto the nightstand. My hands were trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. As Nicholas stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, I looked at him and felt a deep, cold anger settle over me. He had no idea what I'd just discovered, but now I had proof. And I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The name Peyton lingered in my mind like a sour taste. I spent days pretending everything was normal while inwardly seething, every glance at Nicholas filled with resentment. I couldn't confront him just yet. I needed more proof, something undeniable. One evening, I decided to follow him. He told me he had another late meeting, his usual excuse, but I didn't believe it anymore. I watched from the window as he drove off, my heart pounding. I gave him a head start, then grabbed my keys and followed. It didn't take long before his car pulled into a dimly lit parking lot, right outside a bar I had never seen him go to. And there she was, Peyton. She was standing near the entrance, casually flipping through her phone, like she had done this 100 times before. My stomach twisted. I parked a distance away, not wanting to be seen. For a moment, I just watched them together. Nicholas stepped out of the car, smiled at her, and pulled her into a kiss. It wasn't just physical. It had intimacy, something we had lost long ago. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, white-knuckled. I needed to get closer to hear them, but my legs felt like lead. Finally, I forced myself out of the car, keeping low, moving closer until I could hear their voices. "I thought you were going to tell her," Peyton said, her voice soft but impatient. "I will," Nicholas muttered, "but it's not the right time. You don't understand how complicated this is." "Complicated," she scoffed. "You're either leaving her or you're not, Nicholas. You can't keep stringing me along." I wanted to scream, to rush up and confront them, but I stayed rooted, barely breathing. This was my life unraveling before me, and yet I couldn't make a sound. After a moment, Peyton leaned into him, her voice dropping. "Do you think she suspects anything?" He hesitated. "Betsy said something strange, but Gabriella doesn't know." At that, Peyton laughed. "Out of the mouths of babes, huh? Your daughter's more perceptive than you give her credit for." My heart nearly stopped. Even Peyton was mocking me, like I was the fool in my own marriage. They had no idea how close I was, listening to every word, taking in every betrayal. As they turned to head into the bar, I backed away, unseen, tears threatening to fall, but my mind focused on one thing. I had heard enough. It was time to confront the truth. It had been a week since I'd caught Nicholas with Peyton. The betrayal cut deeper with every passing day, but there was something else I couldn't shake. Betsy's words. That hauntingly innocent voice, talking about the girl in the trunk, had turned my world upside down, and the more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed. How could a 4-year-old know something so specific, something she had no way of understanding? I watched Betsy as she played with her dolls on the living room floor. She was humming a tune, oblivious to the turmoil around her, or so I thought. My mind wandered to the past. There had been other moments, other strange things she'd said that I hadn't paid attention to, until now. "Mommy," she had once whispered to me as I tucked her in for bed. "Daddy's going to be gone a lot." At the time, I had dismissed it, thinking she overheard Nicholas talking about his work. But she was right. Shortly after that, his late nights started, and the distance between us grew. I knelt down beside her, brushing a hand through her soft curls. "Betsy, sweetie," I began gently, "remember when you told me about the girl in the trunk?" She paused, looking up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. "Yes, Mommy. How did you know about her?" Betsy blinked, as if the question didn't make sense. "She told me," she said simply, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. My heart skipped a beat. "Who told you, Betsy?" "The girl," she replied as she turned back to her dolls, arranging them with care. "She said she was hiding and didn't want to be found." A chill ran down my spine. Did she say anything else?" Betsy thought for a moment, her little hands busy with her toys. "She said Daddy knows, but he doesn't want to tell you." I froze, goosebumps rising on my skin. It was one thing for Betsy to repeat something she might have overheard, but this, it was as if she had a secret window into things she couldn't possibly understand. "Sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "has this happened before? People telling you things like that?" Betsy nodded, still focused on her dolls. "Sometimes, they whisper. It's like a game." My mind raced. Could Betsy have some sort of gift? It was as if she saw right through the world's facades into the secrets people tried to hide. A strange ability that I hadn't noticed until now. I took a deep breath, trying to wrap my mind around it. "What else do they tell you, Betsy?" She shrugged, looking up at me with a smile. "They tell me secrets, Mommy. Like the one Daddy's hiding." I sat back stunned. This wasn't just a child's imagination. Betsy was seeing something I couldn't explain. Something real. And now it seemed the truth about Nicholas was out there, and she had been the first to reveal it. The house was eerily quiet when Nicholas came home that evening. I had put Betsy to bed early, her sweet innocence too precious to be tainted by what was about to unfold. The evidence I had gathered over the past few days was laid out on the dining room table. Text messages, photos, even a recording of a phone conversation between Nicholas and Peyton. My heart pounded in my chest. but I knew there was no turning back. Nicholas entered the house, loosening his tie as he stepped into the hallway. He paused when he saw me standing in the dining room, my arms crossed, the table between us a battlefield of betrayal. "Gabriella," he greeted me, his voice cautious. "What's all this?" "Sit down, Nicholas," I said, my tone colder than I had ever heard it. "We need to talk." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to the items on the table. A flash of guilt crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with a feigned nonchalance. He pulled out a chair and sat down, his movements slow, deliberate. "What is this about?" he asked, though the tension in his voice betrayed his attempt at calm. I picked up one of the photos, holding it out to him. It was of him and Peyton, standing far too close outside a restaurant I knew he had never taken me to. "You tell me," I replied. His face paled as he looked at the photo. He reached for it, but I pulled it back, not allowing him to touch it. "Gabriella, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off. "Explain." My voice rose, anger bubbling to the surface. "Explain how you've been sneaking around with Peyton while lying to my face? Or maybe you can explain what Betsy saw, Nicholas. Our 4-year-old daughter, who you've been lying to as well." His eyes widened in shock. "Betsy, what are you talking about?" "She told me about the girl in the trunk," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "She knew, Nicholas. Our little girl knew about your affair before I did. How could you do this to us? To her?" He looked away, guilt now fully etched on his face. "Gabriella, Don't you dare try to justify this," I snapped. "You've been hiding Peyton, lying to me, and using our daughter to cover your tracks. Did you think you could just keep pretending? That Betsy wouldn't say anything, that I wouldn't find out?" Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, the weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. "I never meant for it to go this far," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I was going to end it, I swear, but things just got out of control." "Out of control?" I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You let it go too far the moment you decided to betray your family." Tears welled in my eyes, but I fought them back. "You've broken something, Nicholas, something that can't be fixed with apologies. Betsy trusted you. I trusted you. And you threw it all away for what? A fling? A moment of weakness?" He hung his head, silence heavy between us. The weight of his betrayal was suffocating. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what needed to be done. "This is over, Nicholas. I'm done. Betsy and I deserve better than this. Better than you." Nicholas looked up at me, desperation in his eyes. "Gabriella, please. I'll do anything to make this right." I shook my head. "It's too late. The damage is done. And now you need to leave." His shoulders slumped, defeat settling over him. Without another word, he stood up and walked out the door, the sound of it closing behind him echoing through the empty house. I stood there, my heart aching, but a strange sense of relief washing over me. It was over. The confrontation, the lies, the deceit, everything was laid bare, and I knew, as painful as it was, that Betsy and I would be okay. Because in the end, truth always had a way of coming out.